Chad, you like games, right?
No.
No?
Oh, wait, did you say games?
Games, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like those.
Oh, okay.
We work behind. Pull up a chair, my friend, because it's finally time for Games and Trades.
So I thought, like, what are some things we like about games? Or like, what are some like cool mechanics we like about games? What can we really like talk about to help our viewers get to know us and start some kind of conversations on
Yeah.
things that we like, things we like to see.
I think
in
the
games.
thing I like most about games is having fun.
Does not compute. Explain.
You're like, I like to destroy my enemies.
My brother-in-law says all the time, like when we play games with the kids, he's like, I just want you to know, we don't let kids win in this house. We crush them. Like, I like this. But no, we absolutely should have fun with our games. I think that's the right way to play, quote unquote, is just have fun with it and kind of match your energy with your play group, I think is a big.
Yeah.
Because that's has been a
read
big
the
problem
room.
in the past. Yeah, exactly. Like if you want to be super competitive, find super competitive friends. If you want to do beer and pretzels, find beer and pretzels friends. But
And you know what? Have both groups and just change it up.
hey, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. As a person who does that, then I
Yeah.
absolutely appreciate. What are some of the mechanics that we like about board games? I thought it would be like a cool thing to kind of start us off and really kind of color some of the discussions we have on some games we're gonna play on the channel a little bit later. So I think we're gonna start out with 5 mechanics that we really like in the board games in our collection, and then give you a couple of examples of the games we like that have those mechanics. So I will kick it to Chad first. What is your 5th most favorite mechanic?
You know, I'm glad you asked because I've been thinking about
boy.
this over the last, say, 24 hours or so, and I have a little preparation here. So, do they got to be in order?
I mean, I'll put them in order. But
I'm not going in order.
Okay.
So the first one
Just
I'm
throw 'em out there.
gonna say is, and I don't want to do this one first because I think it might be on your list,
Okay.
and so I want to get it in there before you. And I was wondering
Cover mine
if
up.
that was going to happen or not. So, first favorite mechanic of games is the 3 most powerful words in Magic.
Draw a card.
Draw a card.
Yeah.
Anything that lets you play the game more.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like games like I've played games where it's a cool idea to have like cards in hand be a resource like your health or something, but like then you take damage, you have to discard cards.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea, but it's also not fun. It's kind of unfun in my opinion because that takes away your ability to play the game. And like, what am I here for if I'm not going to get to play the game?
Yeah. And I think that like if it's like a backup mechanic, like there are games where it's like Gloomhaven is a game like that, where it's kind of a backup mechanic instead of a central mechanic to the game
Yeah.
with the hand management element.
Yeah.
So I do like that it gives you options. Anything that gives you tactical options, I like. But it is kind of a feel bad if it's just a central mechanic that you got to dump these cards that you really want to play.
Yeah, like I don't want to name names because I'm not trying to shame anybody, but we played a game at Gen Con one year at in the demo room, not the demo room, but in the vendor room, and this was a game that was for sale by a company that we liked,
Okay.
and we're like, okay, we'll play this game, and it was a demo version, so it wasn't set up as maybe properly like it would if you were playing the game.
Yeah.
But you get like 3 cards, and those are your health points. And if you take damage, you have to discard a card. Okay, cool. And we're playing the demo, and I'm the 4th player. And on the first player's turn, everybody took a point of damage to have to discard a card. And on the second player's turn,
I got
everybody
you.
took a point of damage.
Yep.
So I died before I had a turn.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is a fun game, guys.
Game
Sign
balance
me
is very
up.
important.
Yeah. So that's not fun. But drawing cards is fun because that gives you more game. Like you get to play more game. You have more choices. You have more things that you can do. And it's really fun in a game like, obviously Magic, but I really like it in San Juan. And in San Juan,
yeah.
it is a resource. So you are discarding for something, but you're choosing to do that. It's not against your will, not even on your turn kind of thing. So if I want to play this big building, I can. And so San Juan's probably my number 1 game when I think about drawing cards and just cards as a mechanic. It's one of my favorite games. But then also in like Dominion, like if you get a card that lets you draw more cards, then you can keep chaining, and that's a lot of fun.
I am a big offender of getting 2 into card draw in Dominion. Like
Yeah, that and Ascension, and like my turns take forever.
Legendary,
because,
like all
I
those
love it.
cards. Yeah, like
It's fun.
the Spider-Man deck. If I have Spider-Man and Wolverine and Legendary, and I can just keep chaining card draw, it's
Yeah.
like I'm having the most fun I've ever
I think
had.
Mr. Fantastic does that
Yeah.
too, or something. Yeah,
Because Spider-Man's all low point stuff, so you want to combo them with like the low point
right.
Wolverines and everything. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I love drawing cards. And this is why like we didn't do a lot of like combo prep on this because I wanted to see where we would go with it.
Yeah.
So mine is a little different, but I'm going to tell you about my 5th favorite mechanic in games, and that is engine building. There's just something about when you have all of your elements together and you can really make them kind of come together in a way that gives you a big turn or really like gets you to that really optimal place in the game. I really like engine builders that let you fire them a few times as opposed to like some of the games that really like, it's one build up and you fire it off one time. I think it's a Race for the Galaxy that's kind of like that, or is it Cosmic Encounters that...
Maybe Cosmic Encounters.
Yeah, that you really like, you build, and obviously I haven't played the game enough to remember, but it's like you build up your engine for one big shoot and then it's over. Like, so you only get to experience the fun of it once. But games I think do a really good job of engine building is, I think Splendor is a great engine building kind of game when you're building up your gems. I really like Terraforming Mars as an engine builder. And to a little bit of a lesser extent, Ark Nova. You can't build quite the Terraforming Mars engine, but still you can get a few good shots with it in. But all of those games have that element where you're kind of like solving a puzzle, bringing everything together, and creating a lot of value from your engine.
I also have engine building on my list, but I was a little bit more specific, and I said synergistic engine building because there are some games that are engine builders that don't feel very synergistic to me. So it doesn't feel to me like an engine is something that's going to work together and like maybe even multiply the effects of what you're putting into it, and you're going to grow it and it's going to be something really fun and cool by the time you get done with it because it's doing this big thing.
Well, so but since you're in no particular order, let's just shoot right into the synergistic engine building.
Okay, yeah. So, I heard once that Wingspan is an engine builder, and that blew my mind because I was like, I don't think that it is. And I get what they're saying. I mean, like if you get like a Killdeer and a Raven, but really that's not much of an engine. That's just like a 2-card combo that's broken.
So I do fall in the Wingspan as an engine builder camp, but it's more like building each of your areas to where you're taking a synergistic action. Like if you can get one of the rows and we're like you draw a card, you tuck the card, you tuck another card to give yourself more stuff. I think that's an engine you can fire off a lot of times, which is why I really like it.
I mean, I understand the I don't know, the only words come to mind is accusation, but that's not correct. I understand why people would call it that, but I don't, I'm saying it was a surprise to me because I don't think of it that way. And even knowing it and understanding what you're saying, it still doesn't feel that way to me. Like there are engines that can be built maybe, but like the game isn't much of an engine builder to me.
Okay.
So, not that, I love Wingspan, but that's just not how I think of that game. When I think of an engine, something more like maybe like the Mechanofaction in Ascension.
Yeah.
Where everything is just making everything else better and...
or like, I think another good example of synergistic engine building is if you ever played Furnace. Mm-mm. Furnace is a game that's a lot like that, where it's about building out your cards so that you get your best outputs. And then like every time you run your engine, you're getting better and better outputs, like as you build things like your coal, your fuel, your everything. So I think that's probably like a pretty good example. And one of the things that about some of these games as we're offering them up as examples is I think that like Wingspan is not in and of itself an engine building game, right? Like I think engine building is a mechanic that Wingspan utilizes, but it also utilizes things like card draw and hand management, resource management, and a little like super light worker placement. But I think that like just because these games are good examples of a mechanic doesn't mean that that's maybe the central mechanic or the only mechanic that's going on in that game.
Sure, yeah. Like that's fair.
Like if we move on to my next favorite mechanic, which is deck building, there are a lot of deck building games that are also engine building games.
I didn't think about that, but deck building's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, so a good example for me of that is Dominion. Obviously, it's like the cardinal deck builder. It's probably the one that started it all. But a lot of Dominion is building your deck to have an engine that fires off.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great example of like a game that can have multiple mechanics that synergize together very well. Elegant, there's that word again that we talked about a couple of times ago.
I really like that word. I like elegant design.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, but where it comes together in a way that feels like I am achieving the aim of the theme. Like
Yeah.
is really like elegance for me, and in making sure that I'm not just bolting mechanics onto a game. I'm really creating a game in which the mechanics blend to create an engaging experience that has a cool amount of tension.
Yeah, and I'll take like a little bit of a detour here and go away from board games for just a second and talk about video games.
Okay.
Slay the Spire, excellent deck builder. And the whole game, you're building your deck. You're taking out cards you don't want. You're adding cards you do want. You're upgrading cards.
Yep.
I think that's an excellent example of a deck builder. But one that's been really popular lately is Balatro,
Yes.
which I don't think is a good example of a deck builder. And I don't know why it's called a deck. I know why it's called a deck builder, but it doesn't seem fair to me because you kind of have a deck and you can modify it a little bit, but it's hard to modify the deck. You can modify some of the cards.
Right.
So I just pointing out that like deck builder, like, Dominion, Slay the Spire, Ascension
Yep.
are all up there. Balatro is a great game on its own right, but
Yeah.
less so for the deck building mechanic.
Well, and I think that the really neat thing about deck building as a mechanic is that there is a range of how deck building interacts with your game. So we've got pure deck builders like Dominion or Legendary Encounters, and then we've got deck builders as part of a greater whole like Clank or Clank Legacy or Clank, like all the Clanks,
Yeah.
and the old Thunderstone Quest. Another great example, like you're using your deck to traverse through a dungeon to get resources instead of just shuffling and going through your deck a bunch of times like a pure deck builder like Dominion.
Yep.
And that's why I think like as a mechanic, I also think, and the reason I kind of knocked it down a little bit, even though I love a good deck builder, is that I think a lot of games fall into a trap where they bolt deck building on as a mechanic, and it's just not really well utilized in the game. Like it doesn't synergize with some of the other things you have going on, and it becomes more of a disjointed experience. For me, this is like Lost Ruins of Arnak, which I think the deck building piece of it is not really a feel-good part of the game. It's you like the game in spite of the deck building. You don't like the game because
I actually
of the
didn't
deck
get to
building.
play that game.
Oh, you should.
No,
It's still a good game.
we set it all up and we were going to play. We had like, max people and it was this big orchestration and we realized that the person who brought the game, I'm not going to name names.
Oh no, I know who it is.
Forgot
I
the
remember
deck.
this. Yeah, I remember this.
We had everything except for the cards.
Pro tip: if you're going to play a game, bring all of the components.
Yeah.
You know who you are. All right, next for you.
I want to add on another
Oh, yeah.
thing up there. So, but also dice building.
Oh yeah.
So, which doesn't even really make sense to say that, but also like games where like you can pick different dice and you can change what's on the dice. That's hard to do and it's hard to do well. So there's not a lot of games that do it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm really bad at names, but we have this one game where you get the dice and you can buy like a tile and they kind of snap on like a Lego kind of fit. And then you can modify your dice
Yeah.
that way. That's a really cool mechanic.
I think Quarriors was a good example of
Warriors
dice building.
is a good example. of that.
Under the Dwarven Mountain, where you can kind of draft different dice throughout the game. Yeah, it's not a super well, and actually some of the role players do that kind of thing, and Dice Throne as well. But I think it's not a well built out genre of gaming, but when there's good examples of it, I always liked giving them a play.
All right, so my next one will be time-based changes of your choices. And I don't know of a better way to put this, but like there are some games where like maybe you have a dial that rotates and your choices change every turn depending on where you're at
Okay.
on the dial. But when it's predictable, like not just sheer random chaos, but like I know that next turn my choices are going to be these, so this turn I'd probably need to make choices to better prepare for that.
Okay.
So again, it does that really well in a cool way that I haven't really seen is Fromage.
Yes.
And so the whole board shifts every turn. And when you put your pieces on the board, you get a quadrant and you get to place pieces on that quadrant. And the way that it's designed, your pieces point at the quadrant that you're going to be on when those pieces come off the board.
Okay, yeah, and actually, Windmill Valley does something a little bit similar in its execution. So, yeah, I think that's really neat. So not so much like the Time Stories games or Sherlock Holmes, because that can be a little bit variable. But yeah, I do like that.
Yeah, just like something. Sometimes it's like a season-based thing, or like Fromage. I think those are like seasons or something, like quarters of the year maybe. But and then there's another one where I can't remember. I'm horrible with names. You're gonna hate me for this. But there's one game where like you pick a tribe that you're playing, and like the earth is thawing or something, and
The Revive?
Yeah. Revive. That has a mechanic like that, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. I think they did it really well. I only played that once or twice. But.
Yeah. And we're gonna talk about Revive in just a moment.
Oh, okay,
too.
cool.
Yeah. So time-based choices.
Time. I don't know of a better way to word it, but yeah, choices that change per turn predictably.
Yeah. The only thing I don't love about that is that the potential for AP, like, because I'm a big plan out my turn during
Yeah.
everybody else's turn,
Yeah.
but that assumes that the board is going to be somewhat predictable. That adds an element
Yeah.
of oh god, okay, now I have to change my whole turn. But I think that's a really neat element of a lot of games.
I think that's why I like it too, because the way that my brain works and the way that I play, I also plan out my turn,
Yeah.
and I'm usually 2 or 3 turns ahead, just because
Yeah.
that's just how my brain works, and so I like that because I can plan this turn and next turn, and then but I know other people that I play with don't like that, and that makes it a lot harder for them.
Yeah.
My wife's like that a little bit. She has a little bit of analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
To
No, not at all. I don't
Yeah.
recall that ever.
and so games like that might get a little deep on the decision chart for some people, but I like it.
All right, number 3 for me is tableau building.
That's a good one.
So whether it is tiles or cards or anything that I'm building out something in front of me, I just love the ability to kind of look at the resources I have available to me and arrange it in such a way that whether it's part of an engine or it's just arranging it to get my optimal number of points, I love being able to manipulate my resources in that way. Probably my favorite tableau builder right now is Earth, because it does all of those things. It facilitates an engine, it facilitates point scoring, and it just gives you a lot of interesting decisions that wouldn't happen if the placement of your cards wasn't a thing, right? Because the way you're placing horizontally, vertically, diagonally will impact how many points you can score. And for somebody who likes to be like on the analytical side of gaming instead of just the vibe-based side of gaming, it just gives me a lot to think about and a lot of interesting decisions to make. Another really good tableau builder that I love is I'm going to say Wingspan because it is kind of a tableau builder. You're facilitating your engine with how you are doing it. And another one of my favorite game series, Everdell, really matters how you're building out your little village so that you can get maximum benefit and score the most points that you can.
Whenever I think of Tableau, I think you're going to hear this a lot from me, but San Juan, because it's one of my favorite games. The positioning doesn't matter in that game, but I don't know. I kind of like that as a game ending mechanic too.
Yeah.
Like once you get your Tableau full, then that triggers the end of the game.
Yeah.
And so, San Juan hits a lot of sweet points for me. A couple that we haven't even got to yet, to be honest.
What do you got next?
My turn already?
It is your turn already.
Let's see. What did I say? I did that one. I did this one. I'm going to say, did I say choice already?
You didn't, but I'm eager to hear more.
I'm going with choice. And we talked about this a little bit before, which is why I wasn't sure if I said it yet.
Okay.
I like games where you have decisions to make, which is kind of like the crux of a lot of what we've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah.
Like whether it's too much choice and you get an AP, or if it's just the right amount for you in particular. That tends to be like some of the favorite games. I don't like games that don't have choice. Mm-hmm. So the number one that I always think about is Parcheesi, because it's just a roll and move.
Yep.
You roll the dice and then see what happens. You're not making any decisions. You're not playing that game. You're just hanging out, which is fine. If you just want to hang out, cool. But there's other ways I'd rather hang out. We could be talking about games instead of doing that.
I'd rather talk about games than play a game that offers no choices.
Exactly. Yes. And
No, wait. Parcheesi does have a choice. You can choose not to play Parcheesi.
you can just choose not to play.
You can choose not to play.
That's the only way to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
We all
play.
win.
So yeah, the other one I'm going to say is Cat in the Box, and I think this one's controversial. I think I've told you this before.
You
I don't know
have.
if I've told you on this on camera, but
Not on camera, but we've talked about
that game has illusion of choice, so it's more stomachable. But every game I've played of it so far, the first who went first determined who won the game. Mm-hmm. But that is given that everybody makes good decisions. If you're playing with people who maybe don't, aren't super gamers, then it'd be a lot more fun because you don't necessarily know. But there's pretty much a right choice to make at all times, and if you're doing that right choice, then whoever went first going to determine who wins.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that.
And I don't remember if it was the first player that wins, or if it offset it. But
yeah, and for me, that's like gaming is my favorite games are always the games that offer me interesting choices. Like I use the word tension a lot too, and what I mean by that is always like when I'm making choices in games, like what's my opportunity cost of doing anything in a game, right? What's my what does it cost me to do this particular thing? Why is this good versus something else? That's always like tension. Or am I under a time constraint? Am I under a turn constraint? Do I only have so many things to work with? So that's the two things that really make gaming for me, like interesting choices and interesting tension.
Do you prefer strategic decisions, like I'm going to go this route because I think that I can make the most points this way, or do you prefer the kind of decisions where it's like balancing risk versus what you want to do kind of thing?
It depends on the man. It really depends on the game and the situation. Yeah, it really, really depends. Like there are games that really that reward risk and reward. Like Arnak is one of them, and probably a lot of others I'm missing in the moment. But then there are games where like the risk isn't as interesting, or it isn't as there isn't as big a payoff, right? I know the consistency is where I want to be, and that's really where like I will sit and look at my options and really weigh out what's my what's my expected value, what's my EV. Like probably an overused gaming term, but I still use it all the time.
It's overused, but it's also like the right
Everybody
term.
knows what it means.
It's the right it's the right term. So it is what it is.
So short answer, depends. Longer answer is it's probably option one.
Yeah, for me it's option one.
Most of the time.
I prefer strategic decisions over sacrificial decisions, I guess, where you're having to choose to give up one thing or another thing. I don't like those as much as the...
Well, let me relate it back to something I'm constantly telling new gamers. Like some part of the fun factor for a lot of people in games is like, oh, if I do this thing, I'm a screw Chad. It's like, but I'm really going to screw you, right? and I always try to relate like, okay, if that's fun for you, like do what you want to do. But if you're like trying to do well in this game, you always want to make decisions that advance your board. Like you want to make a long-term strategic decision instead of the like, oh, but I'm going to screw Chad, so this is great. Now, if you can do both,
if you can do both,
do it, right?
Yeah, I hate screw your neighbor games. I don't like being receiving of them. I don't like doing it to other people. But some games do it well, where it's not like it doesn't become like a core concept of the game. Like Dominion can spiral out of control in that.
It can,
and can get to unfun regions depending on certain setups.
But I think that's an example of like, if you really think about this strategically, you would see that like the better thing for me to do is advance my board, ignore you for the moment, unless you're just going to win the game or do something that's going to take me out of it. Yeah. Versus the short term, like, well, I could just really poke you and hope it works out.
You're one step away from king making at that point too.
You can.
Nobody likes. Nobody likes.
So number 2 on my sorted list.
Mine's sorted by feel.
Sorted by vibe. Oh,
it's
God.
Vibe.
Okay, it's all vibes.
I'm vibe coding my list.
Okay, Gen Z, you got it. So my number 2 in my organized list is area control. And I really love spreading resources around the board in interesting ways and just kind of like seeing how long you can hold everybody else off. So I think great examples of the area control genre are all those early like Eric Lang games. So like, oh no, what's the 40K one called that was just in my head? Fallen Stars, Blood Rage, Rising Sun, and Ankh. Yeah. All great examples of our area control genre. Also, Wonderland's War. If you've ever played that, excellent area control type game where you get different kinds of bonuses. Spirit Island, which I know Chad's a Spirit Island guy, so we'll get that one.
Yeah.
Just trying to manage keeping your colonizers off, and then Scythe is I think one of like the area control games that probably everyone's played at this point.
That's funny because that's one of my least favorite game mechanics.
Really?
I hate area control games, and I think it's because I don't understand it. So again, just like however your brain works.
Yep.
Like there's a couple things I don't like about it. One is like you got to manage resources in a fuzzy way, and you can overcommit, and then that's a mistake, and undercommitting is a mistake. And so you got to be kind of right at a sweet spot, but also that can vary depending on what your opponents are doing. So I don't like the uncertainty of that. And then also, I lost my train of thought, but there was another thing I don't like about it.
If you think about it, just jump
I'll
right
let
in.
you know.
So what I do like about area control is a lot. I think it facilitates a type of game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I often associate area control games with like not necessarily war games, but like territory control games that often have like an attack element. So if you do not like screw your neighbor games or games where you have to take negative actions against your
Yeah,
neighbors,
maybe that
then you're
was-
not going to like area
Maybe
control.
that was my second thing.
Probably we'll be
go
very
with that.
generous and we'll give it to you, right? But I just think I think one of the interesting tension points for me in area control games is just figuring out what I need to do to defend like the most important parts of my board and then keep poking at the parts of my board, like trying to find the weakness in my opponent's game plan. Eclipse, I think, is another great example of that style of area control. And also Twilight Imperium, despite the fact that I'm not a Twilight Imperium guy.
Cthulhu Wars?
Cthulhu Wars. Yep, thank you. Excellent. I might be the only person in our gaming group that loves Cthulhu Wars.
It was fun.
Oh, okay, we're gonna play again then. You all heard
I
it.
would play again. Well, I don't know. I played once and I beat you. I don't know if I should. Maybe I should just lock in that win record.
That's where like I'm 1-0 in I'm 1-0 at Pandemic on
undefeated.
the hardest level. Yeah, so I refuse to play it again.
Yeah.
Just so I can say I have 100%.
Actually, so my
win
number
percentage.
2, was tension. That was the word
Yeah.
that I couldn't remember. I don't like the tension of it, and I think going down another level, it's probably just the adversarialness of it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like screw your neighbor games, and then like the kind of tension that causes and
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know. That's just not as fun for me.
Fair.
That's a me thing. That's not, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean this is obviously all this is just us talking about things we like. And
Right. Yeah. Everybody's different.
Everybody's different. We're different. Our gaming group is different. The people watching us are going to be different. All three of them.
Yeah, and when you're in like a large group too, you can kind of. That's one of the fun things about like a big
gaming group, yeah.
party or a big gaming group is because you can kind of float around a little bit and see what's going on, and maybe like this is really tickling your fancy today, but like, you know, oh, they're going to play Eclipse over there. We're going to go
We're
home.
gonna do something else. We're gonna they're gonna be there for the next 3 hours. We know we're gonna do something else. All right,
Yeah.
you get one more.
Oh, just one.
Just one more.
Okay, so I'm going to have to go with. Man, I have two that I really want to say, but
Gotta pick one.
I'm going to go with progression. So games that let you progress and develop. And so kind of related to engine building, like I think
Okay.
engine building is an example of that.
Okay.
But you know, Spirit Island is one where, you know, you've got your board that you're starting out with and it's got all your abilities on it.
Oh, okay.
And you can't do these at the bottom yet. You got to
Yeah.
kind of build up to it. So I like things that have kind of, I hate to use the analogy like the carrot dangling in front of you, but that's a mountain peak that you can work towards. Like you can see it in the distance and you can go get that thing.
Got it.
And then, yeah, so the progression of it, being able to level up, like that's really fun. Like if there's like a dungeon crawler that, you know, you flip over your card when you get, you know, enough of whatever resource.
Yeah, I mean, all the biggest dungeon crawlers, Descent, Cthulhu, Death May Die, Imperial Assault, all have that kind of like experience and progression mechanic. And I think there's two sides to it too. There's like a character progression mechanic, and then there's a board progression mechanic.
Yeah.
So like when you're buying additional spaces for your board so that you can add things and make your board, we just go back to Puerto Rico and San Juan. Like
Yeah.
you build out your board, build out your city, Foundations of Rome has a progression element where you can get the different sorts of buildings that have different powers. And then, yeah, so I really like that.
Yep. So progress
Unlock
is good in
your
any
board.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, I gain experience, you know, any RPG.
Yeah, any RPG, and so some things about like this is just like a little anecdote, but like some progression games, like if I'm playing with other people, I get so excited or like I want to unlock it so much, and then if like somebody else unlocks it before me, I get super mad. I'm just like,
No, and actually, you know what is the worst is when you're competing for upgrades.
oh yeah. Oh, Ascension is a great example of that. So
Oh,
like there's like
yeah.
a big monster card out
Yep.
there and it costs 7 and like, oh, I got the 6th rune and then she gets the 6th rune and then like who's gonna get the 7 first? And then you get it and then the other person's like, I was gonna buy
Whether
that.
it's competitive
And
or cooperative.
and it's
same
always the
thing.
turn that you were gonna do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, the number of times I've had the Dominion win in my hands, like, and then someone else ends the game, like takes the last colony or whatever. It's the worst.
Yep.
All right, so I have one more. Do you have a guess?
No, I
Given
don't.
the kinds of games I love to play, all my favorite games. Many of my favorite games have this one element.
Yeah, I don't know, because there's some things on your list that caught me off guard, and then I don't know.
Number one for me, worker placement.
Oh, okay.
So many of my favorite games are worker placement games. It's a genre that I absolutely love. The one bad thing, so it is maybe at this point it's become a little bit of an overused mechanic. I think because just like it's gotten bolted onto a lot of games. But I think when it's well done and well implemented, for me, again, lots of interesting choices. How do I go through my board, see the best decisions, and use my very limited resources in a way that I can derive maximum benefit? So like one of the one that I learned to play on, like my first worker placement love was Lords of Waterdeep. At this point, like it's been passed by 100 incredible games who utilize the mechanic really well. But it's still a game that I use for a lot of gateway, or maybe not a gateway game, but like level 1 gamers, like here's worker placement. We're going to do this now and do it. Another is Viticulture, which is one of my all-time favorite games. Super limited resources in your workers, and you just have to figure out how to compete for resources in the best way to make your board work. And then a newer example that's one other favorite of mine is Apiary, which is the space bee game from.
So I haven't had a chance to play that.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. It's one of those games that it's one of the only games that I would say is one of my favorites. It's not in my collection because I know so many people that have it, but it's probably going to end up here at some point just because I'm a degenerate. But yeah, I think just, again, interesting choices, interesting limited resources, and figuring out like what is my opportunity cost? How do I use these extremely limited resources in a way
you're going back to choice and
yeah, exactly. It goes back to choice, goes back to like what's the tension here?
Yeah, and you said, like, just to comment on the bolted on thing, like I don't know that it is. I think it's enough of a core mechanic that I don't feel like I feel like it just needs to be there for a lot of things. And so some games I do think it's I do think it's hard to do well. I think there's a lot of games that don't do it particularly well because
I disagree a little bit there. I think that there's so many good examples of the genre or the mechanic that when it's not well done, it's super easy to pick out. So I don't know that it's particularly difficult to implement. I just think it's really easy to see when it's not done well.
Maybe. I guess what I'm thinking is kind of like the lowest common denominator factor. Like if you have a resource of 1, you can't give like 1.5 resources. Right. It's got to be 2. So it feels like it can be out of balance sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was going to on that.
Okay, that makes sense.
But even before worker placement was really a mechanic, like with Lords of Waterdeep, what was that, like 10, 12 years ago?
Longer.
Really?
I think so.
I think it was around in other games. It just didn't exist.
We didn't really think about it as a core mechanic of games.
San Juan.
Yeah.
Where you pick a role, it's kind of worker placement. Like you're placing your worker on that role and you're claiming that role. I mean, it's a different physical action, but like maybe that's just a step away. So I think it's a progression of things that already existed. So to me, it feels like a core mechanic that you could build a game around.
And I think that's the case with a lot of these game mechanics, right? Is that they're early. I think of games as like there's a cardinal example of when it blew up. Like like there was maybe a couple trick. I mean, Uno's been a thing forever, right? So trick taking games have always been a thing. But then in like our hobby board gaming hobby, like there was a year where someone made a really like superb trick-taking game, and then it became a fad. So the same thing with things like engines and tableaus, right? Like the more that we progress and the more that we see more and more good implementations of different kinds of mechanics, the more that it becomes easier to pick them out from different kinds of commonality, even though like they've been around for even longer than some of the cardinal examples that we're talking about.
Yeah. What's your take on how would I explain it? Like, what was it? Cones of Dunshire.
Cones of Dunshire.
So, what's your take on like in game design when a designer feels like they take out of too many different bins to build their game with.
Those, oh man.
Are there any games that you really like that border on pulling from too many different mechanics?
Okay, this is where I'm going to talk about a super controversial game.
That's what we want to hear.
I'm going to talk about a super controversial game that I know we have people in the game group that vehemently disagree with me on this.
I'm probably one of them.
Probably one of them. I don't know if you have you played Arcs?
I haven't played Arcs.
Okay.
No, I've heard a lot about it.
Arcs is a game that I feel like smashes some things together in a semi-interesting way. But each of the mechanics doesn't necessarily... I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the sum of its parts is better or if the whole is better. I honestly don't know. Arcs was a game in 2024 that if you have for like 99% of gamers I've spoken to about the game, you have two opinions. It's the worst game they've ever played, or it was the 2024 game of the year. I think it's a six or seven game. Like, right? I played it. I didn't hate it. Well, I'm not like thinking about it. I wasn't running back to the table to play it again. It's there. But for me, that's an example of a game that just has like trick taking. It has area control. It has a little bit of placement. It has a little bit of an engine. It has a little bit of all these things, but they come together in such a way that's not super interesting for me, and I just wasn't as into it.
I feel that way about a lot of the games that come out when you have like a long weekend get together.
Yep.
And the kind of stuff that doesn't come out like if you got like an evening together. You know, usually those games tend to be a little more crunchy, a little bit more involved. But a lot of those types of games feel that way to me. Like,
Yeah.
why do we have this on? Like, there's just a whole nother board to track this other mechanic kind of stuff, like those things. And I don't know, I'm not crazy about those games.
Well, that's where, so I'll say something else that's controversial. I recognize that the latest edition of Twilight Imperium is probably one of the better designed games it's probably one of the better designed games that anyone's ever designed, right? Like, it has individual elements that are so much fun to interact with like the politics track, the space combat, how you do the area control and how you interact with the planets, the exploration mechanic. Like, you go on and on and on. It's got a lot of things I think that are individually great. My issue with Twilight Imperium playing it is a lot. So like I always joke if anyone in our group plays Twilight Imperium with somebody who's never played Twilight Imperium before, it becomes we'll see you in 5 hours, right? Because it's just a lot together. So it just depends on what the package looks like, how some of them come together. Like, sometimes it's extremely well designed. It's actually pretty darn tight, but it turns into something that becomes a big bear to interact with. Like, you only get to play, like, there's two ways to play Twilight Imperium. There is, you set aside like a full half a day for it, especially if you have a new player who needs to know the rules or somebody who hasn't played a lot, or you play it in like 1 hour, you play it in 1 hour shifts over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, like, which is both fine. Like, it's the people that love it. It's just not as much for me.
I'd say too, when a game gets to have that much different things going on, it feels a little bit, you may not agree with this, it feels a little bit to me like we're getting back to the no choice thing, or the illusion of choice. Because you have all these choices, but there's so many, you're going to get some of them wrong. And so it's going to kind of just average out, and the winner is like who has the better average. And to me, that's not as fun as picking a strategy and going for it.
I will disagree with you a little bit.
I figured you would.
Because one of the things I like about those kinds of games is there's a lot of ways to attack them. I think
it depends on the game for that. Yeah.
The well-designed games.
The well-designed games, I can pick a strategy and go for it.
Yes.
And you may or may not win if you put a strategy up because somebody might have pulled theirs off better.
Right.
But
I don't like the games that force me to interact with everything poorly.
Yeah.
And aren't really it's not really rewarding to do that. I do like the games that force me to either pick a path using some information, and if I do well on that path, I can win the game. Or I can generalize, and if I generalize well, I can still win the game. Like, that kind of thing I really like, but it requires it to be kind of a well-designed, well-balanced experience, which is extremely hard to do.
Wingspan does that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you can pick, like one fun way to play Wingspan is just take all of the help everybody cards.
Yeah.
And it's fun to win that
Absolutely
way too. Like you feel like you're just giving people resources all game, but then you win anyways.
Yeah.
That's a fun way to play. I don't
Yeah.
think that's maybe the best way, but it's fun.
Yeah. And I mean, Twilight Imperium, going back to that, excellent example of a well-balanced, well-designed game. You can win in a lot of different ways. Eclipse, another great example. A little bit, some of the campaign games like Gloom and Frosthaven, like if you specialize down the right path, even some of the classes that aren't as good can still be good, and you can still have an enjoyable game that you can win. But again, it requires the game to be really tightly designed, really well balanced, and not exploit. Like, because that's where like I also feel like Gaia Project does an excellent job of this, whereas Terra Mystica did an extremely poor job of it because the balance just is not there in that game.
Well, I think that we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. Hopefully, like you learned a little bit about why we like some of the games we like and some of the things we say. And
I really like the amount of personality that came out in the choices that we had. You know.
yeah, and the fact that we did not do a combo preparation, so we kind of had to interact with each other.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to be surprised.
So yeah, so if you feel like you learned a little something, please hit us with a like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Tell us why we're completely wrong about some of these mechanics.
Tell
or
Rick
some of
why
the
he's
games.
wrong.
That's usually how the gaming group is. Yeah. But thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Leave work behind. Pull up a chair, my friend, because it's finally